doing. But this lot have come in, having made those pledges, as you say, at the general election, where they actually probably didn't need to go as far and or as hard as they did to say no increases in, as you say, income, national insurance or VAT. So they've committed to that. Now they're backed into a corner.
It's just a nightmare. Rachel Reeves tricked us. She is going to carry out a powerful tax and enrich the treasury by completely destroying the elderly and working people. This is a very big scandal that is gaining momentum. Let's figure out what happened. We're starting to watch the first scene.
We're not going to increase tax for working people or whatever that means. And of course it's all over the front pages. The front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. Reeves prepares a tax triple whammy. Here we go again. This is inheritance tax, also freezing of all those income tax threshold bans, which we didn't think they would do. And of course they're now talking about fuel duty going up by as much as 7p. Well, I mean, the thing is that people are already struggling.
Absolutely. And, you know, the no increases in taxes and certainly not hitting working people. Well, if you're a van driver, if you need your car to get around, not only are you being slapped with the ULEZ in London, but wider across the country, an increase in 7p.
Rachel Reeves put her reputation on the line to present a budget providing for tax increases as a measure to restore finances. The NHS needs an additional £9 billion this year. This amount includes about £4 billion in salary increases. The rest is a 2.9% increase needed for the National Health Service to maintain its current performance. Reeves seems increasingly inclined to introduce an increase in employers' contributions to the Social Security Fund. The multi-billion-dollar increase in employers' contributions to the Social Security Fund, as well as the proposed freezing of income tax thresholds for 2 years in the amount of £7 billion, contradict the Labour manifesto.
A lot. That is going to hamper people up and down this country who will be, I think, up in arms, not to mention, as you say, inheritance tax cut when they're already taking away winter food allowance. That is just an attack on our pensioners and our poorest, giving something back to the next generation. It's extraordinary.
And also, just in terms of, I mean, you worked in government. Just in terms of this, the timeline and the fact that we've waited so long for the budget, I think, is a massive mistake.
Absolutely. And look, I've heard other commentators, particularly on the left, say, well, look, actually, nothing is set in stone. You've got to wait until the budget on the 30th. And, you know, as is always the case, they'll tell you, you know, the Treasury will throw out these ideas and just see how it lands with the public before making the announcement. That happens once or twice when you know what you're kind of doing. But this lot have come in, having made those pledges, as you say, at the general election, where they actually probably didn't need to go as far and or as hard as they did to say no increases in, as you say, income, national insurance or VAT. So they've committed to that. Now they're backed into a corner.
It is obvious to everyone that the Labour Party has been planning tax increases all this time. And they couldn't honestly tell the public about it during the election. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves blatantly lied that the public finances they inherited were much worse than they thought, and would use this to justify the tax increases they dishonestly informed us about. The increase in employer contributions is a tax on business, and entrepreneurs themselves are already sounding the alarm. Combined with the employment laws that Angela Rayner announced, and which will increase the administrative burden on businesses, I wonder how the Labour Party can look into the eyes of the companies they hosted at the investment summit and claim to be on their side. Instead of being honest and making this argument, the Labour Party refused to speak directly about its plans. During the election, they promised to provide a secure pension for pensioners, but then cut winter heating payments for the elderly. Their arrogance has led them to decide that they don't need to develop any policies to run the state better. Their hypocrisy has become public knowledge. The politically motivated nonsense of the Labour Party must stop. Now Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves must admit that their empty promises and deliberate tax ploys during the election were wrong, and they must start making arguments that will be convincing. Labour is obsessed with political games, and the budget for the 30th of October is one of those games. And this will be the budget they always planned to present.
But this breaks a manifesto pledge because they said they wouldn't increase income tax. Well, if you freeze the tax thresholds, you do increase income tax. So it's a manifesto pledge which has been broken.
And again with the national insurance contributions, you know, saying not raising it, but now trying to say, well, you know, that wasn't employees, it was maybe employers. We're looking, it's semantics. But most ordinary people reading that manifesto, hearing it, carte blanche time and time again, we're not raising national insurance contributions, and then for the Labour government to go and do that, potentially if they do that, that would be an absolute break of their...
Rachel Reeves is going to extend the freeze on income tax thresholds beyond 2028 in the upcoming budget. This could bring in an additional £7 billion a year. Starmer promised voters that he would not raise income taxes and other key tax rates. The number of people forced to pay income tax has increased by about 4.4 million in 3 years due to the government freezing thresholds. But Rishi Sunak has repeatedly stated that under Labour, people will pay more taxes.
These numbers. So they talked about this 20 billion fiscal hole, which no one can actually corroborate. They also now are saying they want to raise 40 billion, yes, because they're paying all the public sector these walloping rises in their income. But at the same time, they're now also mooting the fact that inheritance tax will be targeted yet again. This is already money you've paid tax on that you're trying to hand down to your family. At the moment, there's this 7-year rule that if you survive more than 7 years after giving that away, then that is zero rated.
Reeves is aiming to raise £40 billion to fill the budget gap. She allegedly seeks to find a balance between investments in public services and stabilisation of the financial situation. The Labour Party continues to blame the previous government for the difficult financial legacy, but promises not to return to austerity measures. However, what do we get now? What they assured us not to do.
Absolutely is. And of course they're going to look at farms as well, because they're exempt at the moment. And of course handing down the family farm, which is a working farm, I think is important. And if they then say that is going to be subject to inheritance tax, that will be a major problem.
Totally. And, you know, post-Brexit, when we need to sort of, you know, export all of the goods of the UK, but protect our farmers in particular, farmers and our fisheries, you know, taxing them, slapping a tax on when they're already finding it difficult. You know, the farming industry is finding it difficult. It's just going to be another tax on them and another tax on Great British farming.
Many family farms will be severely affected if the government changes the benefits in the budget. Farmers are increasingly concerned about media reports that the Treasury is considering this step in the upcoming budget. A PR allows farms to be transferred after death to the next generation of farmers, exempting such enterprises from taxes as long as they are operating farming enterprises. Without current inheritance benefits, the price of all business assets of an individual will be taxed at a new rate of 40%.
And of course, here's another tax they want to increase. Of course, there's been a lot of play talking about the number of new homes being built, 1.5 million homes being built over 5 years, which basically is the same target that Conservatives had, 300,000 homes a year. But also, house buyers will now pay up to 2,500 more in stamp duty from next year. And this is because they won't extend the increase in the thresholds at which point you pay tax. So at the moment, up to £250,000, you pay no tax. And at the moment, if you're a first-time buyer, up to £450,000, because we know that the prices, particularly here in the capital, for a one-bed flat are absolutely exorbitant. So they're going to clobber people yet again.
Stamp duty for first-time home buyers will rise as they plan to cancel the temporary tax break. Starmer announced the termination of another tax break during a conference call on the BBC. Sunak said that the increased threshold would be in effect until April 2025, but since then he has promised to make it permanent. Labour did not make the same commitment, accusing the Conservatives of not fulfilling their promises. During a radio conference call, Starmer told one of the callers that he intended to repeal the rule allowing people to withdraw 25% of their pension as a lump sum without paying tax. However, the Labour Party explained that the validity of the 25% tax break is not limited, and that Starmer was referring to temporary relief, for example, an increase in stamp duty for first-time buyers. Starmer spent most of the election campaign justifying his financial plans. He promised not to return to austerity, but could not say how he would pay for the increase in departmental spending.
It's going to, you know, choke off the growth that you need to see into the economy. It's not just about borrowing and taxing, which is what the Labour government seem to be going down that path. And blaming, as you said, you know, the previous government for a £20 billion black hole that no one can identify. Even the IFS have said it doesn't exist. But doubling that to 40 billion because of all the expenses.
And I think they blocked a freedom of information request to find out where is this 20 billion. And actually, they blocked that request, so you can't actually find out where it came from.
Well, there you are. I mean, I didn't know that, but I do now. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So all of these taxes that seem to be targeting the very people that the Labour government said that they weren't going to target, which is working people and our pensioners who are some of the most poorest in our country. It is a crying shame if all of this does appear on the budget on the 30th of October.
At the beginning of 2024, the poorest families faced the biggest increase in energy prices. This was a double blow to Britain's poorest families because food producers, farmers and trading companies compensated for their losses due to rising prices with sharply increased prices on supermarket shelves. Rising prices have made life difficult for millions of people who are already struggling to pay their bills. Due to the inability to pay for heating their homes, about 16% live in cold and damp houses, as a result of which they are constantly ill. What do you think about this video? Write your thoughts in the comments. See you.